Tonight, a tale of million-dollar crime and intrigue from the shadows of the Iraq War. The international trail of looters and dealers who are devastating the ancient treasures of Iraq. It is said that in war, the first casualty is truth. In this case, the second casualty is history. When the coalition forces thundered through the desert, they were but the latest invading army to overwhelm this, the cradle of civilization. "7,000 years and 4 imperial armies later, the soldiers of the new world arrive in Baghdad. But nobody expected that the looting of a museum would be one of the biggest stories of the war. People around the world were profoundly affected. In fact, months in advance, archaeologists had urged the Pentagon to protect the antiquities of Iraq. Chief among them, McGuire Gibson of the University of Chicago.
I was with a group of 5 people in the State Department and Pentagon on the 24th of January, in which we made the case that Mesopotamia is a very special thing. It's not just a desert. It is the world's oldest civilization. And we also talked about the importance of the Iraq Museum and the vulnerability of that museum, given what had happened in 1991 with the looting of the regional museums.
Gibson was closely in touch with the research director of the Baghdad Museum, Donnie George. Both of them knew private collectors were targeting some of the exhibits in the museum.
There was a kind of meeting in London, and one of them said that I'm waiting for the day that the American army would enter Baghdad. I will be with them. I will enter the Iraq Museum and get what I want.
On Tuesday, April the 7th, U.S. forces sweep past the National Museum in Baghdad. The next day, Wednesday, April the 8th, Donnie George goes home to wait out the end of the war. 24 hours later, the desecration of the museum begins.
We know that Thursday, at about midday, there were hundreds of Iraqis outside the fence of the museum, wanted to go inside. And it was that point when one of our staff who lives in the premises went and asked one of those tanks to come and help. And he said he was sorry, they did not have orders for that. See? And the looting took place on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 days.
As U.S. forces occupy the city, a mob goes on the rampage. Especially at the National Museum.
I think it was Saturday was the first news report, was that the museum was in process of being looted. So, there was, I thought we had secured it, and we obviously hadn't.
The looting was mostly random, but about 5,000 valuable pieces were hand-picked by professional thieves, filling shopping lists for buyers and collectors around the world. Pieces that are still missing. The looters pour out of side doors and past the statue of Ali Baba and the 40 thieves out on the street, melting into the back alleys. Many end up here at the market, a dangerous, edgy place. The day before, a sniper had picked off a journalist and a Marine. Inside, 120 degrees in the shade. The bustle of trade. Holy men and hustlers. Much of the loot moves through this market. Hikmat al-Okali remembers how quickly the thieves overran the nearby museum.
Everybody go to the museum because the museum is a rocket.
The Americans, he said, should have killed them.
If I am American here and you give me time, I kill every Ali Baba because no good my dear.
By Saturday, April the 12th, there'd been 3 days of unchecked looting. On that day, the chairman of the museum, Jabir Ibrahim, goes and begs U.S. forces for protection.
I met the colonel of the Marines. He said, go immediately to the museum. We are going to send American force, to guard the museum.
On Sunday, Donnie, George, and Jabir go to the museum to wait for the promised tanks.
We arrive after 2 o'clock to the museum. And we wait till 8 o'clock evening. And morning, Monday, Tuesday.
No tanks come. For 8 days, the Baghdad Museum is unprotected. In desperation, Donnie George grabs a satellite phone from a TV crew and calls the British Museum, which calls Maguire Gibson, who in turn raises hell at the White House. On Thursday, U.S. soldiers finally move in. In a matter of hours, the commander of the coalition forces, General Tommy Franks, calls on Colonel Matthew Bogdanos of the U.S. Marines.
I'm missing, it's the wheel, it's that wheel, similar to that. Is this beautiful?
Yeah.
Marine Colonel Bogdanos is well chosen. In civilian life, this ex-boxer is a crime-fighting prosecutor in Manhattan and a classics scholar.
The depiction starts at the bottom with water, which is the secret of life.
His message, America cares.
When I was given this mission in April to come to the Baghdad Museum and investigate the theft, begin the recovery, and start protecting, my response was, yes, sir. But my internal, the operation of my mind was, of course.
So why didn't the U.S. forces keep looters out of the museum?
Enemy forces, be they Iraqi army regulars or Fedayeen, chose to use this particular museum compound as a fighting position in blatant and clear violation of international law and all norms of international law.
Was the museum being used as a firing point, as a sniper base?
No, absolutely not.
It comes down to who you believe. For centuries, waves of occupiers have looted antiquities in what is now Iraq. In the British Museum in London, the Assyrian friezes taken from Iraq in the 19th century are famous examples of how conquering powers seized foreign antiquities on a massive scale. Today, there's a host of prohibitions against this sort of thing. A 1936 Iraqi law states that all its artifacts belong to the people of Iraq and must stay there. And there's a 1970 UN convention banning the purchase of looted Iraqi antiquities. But none of that stopped a small number of thieves who, in the chaos of war, knew exactly what they were looking for.
Taken as if filling a shopping list. In the most remote corner, in the most remote room, in the farthest reaches of the basement, through an inaccessible stairwell, only someone with an intimate insider's knowledge, a precise knowledge of the museum and its storage practices, could possibly have even known where to look in the dark. Remember, there's no electricity during the looting period from roughly 8 April to 12 April. They emptied out the contents of most of those plastic boxes, unfortunately getting about 4,800 cylinder seals.
This is a cylinder seal, typically made of precious stone or ivory. Thousands of years before Christ, they were like signatures or credit cards, telling a story about their owner. Today they are coveted by collectors around the world. Two blocks away from the museum, an upscale antiques mall. Local dealers were flooded with looted items. Customers come here to buy looted antiques, like this furniture. The first stop for many of the looters was Mohammed Hussein. But he says he turned the museum thieves away.
I've got something small, it's belonged to my grandfather and so on. So it's a nice story. And then he showed me, my friend, these things been looted from the museum because the serial number is written there.
In fact, Mohammed knows the antiquities smugglers. Well-informed and lethal, they come shopping for foreign clients.
The professional people, really, they are the professional smuggler. They know what they are doing. It looks like an arranged organization. I mean, they are ready to kill because, you know, the rules here is very strict.
Chicago, home of the famous Field Museum. Curator Bennett Bronson has seen global looting networks grow ominously over the last 10 years.
Of course, these looters are far more dangerous than archaeologists. They actually shoot anyone who tries to come and interfere with them. So this is a very difficult situation, and in Iraq, there's really no way of stopping it.
In the museum in Baghdad, Colonel Bogdanos is learning about a huge global market in antiquities that has been stripping the whole of Iraq for years and years.
Through witness interviews, it is clear that there was a systematic looting of all of Iraq's treasures over the course, at least, of the last decade, and indeed longer than that.
The entire country, from top to bottom, is covered with over 10,000 registered archaeological sites. They became targets for looting 12 years ago, after the first Gulf War. Because of the US-led boycott of Iraq, the government in Baghdad lost control of remote areas.
What happened in the 90s is, with the embargo, is the Iraqi government really lost control of the countryside, especially in the south. Anything away from the towns was subject to looting, especially in the south. But since the war, it has become epidemic.
Today, in US-occupied Iraq, the military protects a few famous biblical sites like Babylon. But there are so many unprotected places, rich with ancient history. Iraq used to be called Mesopotamia, which means the land between the rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Nippur was the spiritual capital of the Sumerians, a civilization that flourished for centuries. Beneath this crusted moonscape, 5,000 years ago, a great city thrived. These Sumerians invented writing, accountancy, architecture, civil laws. Nippur was one of the first great cities in the history of civilization. Gwendolyn Like has written 8 books on Mesopotamia.
Oh, it's hugely important. It's hugely important, and especially for us, because the habit of Mesopotamians to write on clay tablets, which we have hundreds of thousands of names of people, which reveal a lot about their religious beliefs. It reveals the participation of women in the labor force, all these sort of things. And of course, there is also what we would call literature. There are myths, there are stories, there are poems, and there is also what is now increasingly considered to be an early form of science.
Archaeologist Maguire Gibson of the University of Chicago has devoted most of his career to Nippur. He says it's dense with important antiquities.
It is very, very hard not to dig a hole and not to find a temple. I mean, you go there trying to, as I did, trying to find an administrative area, trying to find perhaps the governor's palace. We go in, we immediately come down upon a building with niches and buttresses, which says, well, it might be something else, but in fact it proved to be a temple, a very, very big one.
When Baghdad fell, Maguire Gibson went to Iraq and flew down to the sites.
We went on a helicopter trip around a whole group of sites in the south, and I was counting at several sites, 200, 250, 300 men digging at any given time. The army guys I was with shot some shots, drove them off, but as we were leaving, they were coming back.
At Nippur, the 2 men charged with protecting the site say they are helpless. The U.S. military won't let them carry guns, and they are facing heavily armed gangs of up to 50 looters, supervised by men in 4-wheel drives.
مرة طلعت عليهم منا من البيت باغت عليهم عند ناظور شفتهم عندهم قناصات شفتهم يتهيئوا عليه رادوا يرموني.
The nearby military base is only half an hour away. Colonel J.J. Pomfret's authority covers the looted site of Nippur.
It's funny, until you brought it up to me, I was not aware of a historical site.
Surprising, when you learn that this commander studied ancient Near East history at military college.
In my collection of books, I have Werner Keller's The Bible is History.
Colonel Pomfret felt its biblical echoes rolling up through Iraq.
Yes, it was very exciting. When the Euphrates and Tigris River meet, that's probably the Garden of Eden. And we went through Talil and Ur, that's where Abraham was from. And when we get up to Babylon, that's where the children of Israel were, and that's where basically the Jewish religion began. It was an exciting time to go through and actually be the places you just read about.
But what about Nippur?
At first I have to find it on a map and figure out where it's at, so I will.
Gwendolyn Like is not surprised Nippur has been overlooked.
Nippur is not mentioned much in the Bible. That may have had something to do with it. And especially in America, I think this is very important and has also colored people's attitudes.
Colonel Pomfret has his hands full. His troops face constant hostility in the town.
Frederick the Great said that he who tries to defend everywhere defends nowhere. And as you indicated, we're having a tough enough time just trying to keep the city secure.
The colonel has reason to be nervous. A few blocks away at Friday prayers, this Shia mullah is in a fighting mood. He urges the believers to rise up and strike down the invaders. He even blames the USA for the looting of Iraq.
المحتل وهم اليوم يعبثون بثروات العراق أجابوا في سهام الحق صابوا في إمام الحق ذابوا.
While the holy man is pointing his finger at the Americans, around the corner his own people are actually selling the looted artifacts. Ironically, under the military dictatorship of Saddam, if you got caught dealing and smuggling in antiquities, you could be sentenced to death. But now?
Hello!
At first, the local antique dealer sends us away. But before we are out of earshot, he asks us to come back. He has seals. Cylinder seals. Lots of them.
Where did you get it from?
Just like this, like this, like this.
How much do you want for this?
This one. يعني الثمن هذا $700. هذا $500.
He offers to sell us 50 seals, as many as we want, all looted from nearby sites including Nippur, for $200 each.
He said, whatever do you like, he can to arrange you.
In New York, London, or Geneva, that's $250,000 worth. The antique dealer is the first link in a complex network that stretches from places like Nippur to New York and beyond. While the foreign collectors may be rich, the ordinary Iraqis who loot the sites are not. They are desperately poor people feeding foreign demand. The 12-year-old US-led boycott of Iraq killed most legitimate exports, but ironically fueled the runaway trade in antiquities smuggling.
Living standards both in the town and in the countryside deteriorated markedly after the imposition of sanctions and so on. And what could people do to raise some cash? Iraq has two resources. It has oil and it has antiquities, and it has a lot of antiquities.
In faraway New York, antiquities fetch a lot of money. On Madison Avenue, one of the most reputable outlets is the Royal Athena Gallery. Here, a cylinder seal from Iraq sells for thousands. Jerome Eisenberg has been influential in setting the market for Iraqi antiquities in America.
One was sold several years ago in an auction in New York for over $400,000. They go pretty high. When you're talking about small cylinder seals and Babylonian tablets, cuneiform tablets, you're talking about objects that one can put in one's pocket.
The journey of a looted seal from Iraq begins in the sacred soil of Nippur, is moved on by the local antique dealer, is most likely smuggled across the desert into Jordan, through a border post manned by bored U.S. soldiers.
See what I'm doing right now? I'm just talking to people. That's my job. I'm summer camp out here.
And in different customs guards. Jordan has been the major conduit for looted antiquities from Iraq. Take a walk through the ancient alleys to the fashionable antique stores of Amman. And first, they offer the usual bric-a-brac.
Do you have any seals?
But ask for ancient seals and tablets, and there's always the tray in the back cupboard. Iraqi antiquities for $500 to $700 apiece. Go further. Go to the home of the owner of the antique store, and in his glass cabinets, more treasures from Iraq. He guarantees that for the right price, he could ship the 50 cylinder seals from Nippur to Canada.
If we work through you, you could get that amount to Canada safely, right?
Yes.
What
the
you're
Canadian
telling me,
side, there's no problem. American side, there's no problem.
Flown then to the Gulf states, and from there onto the capitals of the world, including London. Charlie Hill is one of the top art detectives in the world. He used to run New Scotland Yard's art investigations. In the mid-90s, the British Museum asked him to look into a recent flood of looted Iraqi antiquities.
I found, to my surprise, that the Royal Jordanian Airlines flew these things in, some of them not direct from Amman on the daily flight, some via Switzerland. And in the hangar, I went there, had a good look around with a customs officer, and we found crate after crate after crate of looted antiquities, obviously looted antiquities. And my customs colleague who I went with said to me, there's not much we can do about this. You know, they got through at the time.
If they are not flown out via Jordan or Dubai, Iraqi antiquities often end up in Israel. In the Old City in Jerusalem, these sacred pieces are openly for sale by dealers licensed by the government. In fact, there's an entire museum dedicated to ancient artifacts from places like Iraq. This footage from 1992 records the opening of the Bible Lands Museum, founded by a legendary Canadian collector.
And here we have at the end of Talmud.
Eli Borowski was a war hero from Poland who worked for the Royal Ontario Museum in the 50s. He single-mindedly put together one of the finest collections of Mesopotamian antiquities in the world, working through a shop in Switzerland. Why Switzerland? For the past 50 years, if you can get it here, you can erase its murky past. The dealer here would import Iraqi cylinder seals from Jordan, lay them down in the free port of Geneva for a period of 30 to 40 days, register them as Swiss, then sell them and ship them out. Toronto. In 1985, the Royal Ontario Museum showcased Eli Borowski's great collection of Mesopotamian artifacts. Bennett Bronson flew in from Chicago and was stunned by what he saw.
I just didn't understand where they'd come from. I thought they almost certainly were coming from Iraq, and several other Middle Eastern countries, and it was pretty clear that those countries had not allowed them to be exported recently. And there was very little concern, I thought, at least there didn't seem many records showing that these had either left their country of origin a long time ago or had left their country legally.
The director of the ROM at the time, Kyler Young, was also suspicious of Borowski's pieces for the exhibition.
The most outstanding one, the one that I remember, is a cylinder seal that was in the Borowski collection that had actually been excavated at Ur. I mean, we know that it was part of the collection that went to the Baghdad Museum, okay? So we know that this object has been stolen. So I went to Ellie and I said, Ellie, this is a real bomb. There's no way we're going to put this on display because, like a bomb, it's going to simply explode the reputation of the Royal Ontario Museum. And Ellie said, oh, really? Was it from Ur? I didn't know that. Well, the hell he didn't know it.
Borowski passed away in January of 2003, but his impact on the market for Iraqi artifacts is felt around the world. His seals are still found in the best collections.
What's the provenance of the pieces you have in your store?
The cylinder seals, my provenance is ex-Eli Borowski collection. And as for things that are selling in that few hundred to few $1,000 range, I don't feel there's any serious need to go beyond that for the provenance.
But in actual fact, For all you know, they could have been looted.
Oh, sure. And if you go into the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you'll probably find 1,000 pieces that may have been looted. I mean, it's typical of anything at that time.
From Switzerland, the passion of the collector. Illegal antiquities are drawn out of their resting places by big money. Archaeologists blame wealthy collectors for the looting that's destroying the ancient world. And some collectors will go to great lengths to get those items into museums.
In some cases, they've implied they'd even be willing to offer a little extra to me on the side if I would agree to put them on exhibition.
Once a piece gets into a museum, two things happen. The public believes it's clean, and its value goes through the roof.
The minute it's selected for exhibition in a major show and it's going to be shown and the photograph's going to appear in the catalog, the object doubles or triples in value.
In New York, tens of thousands flock to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's exhibition, Art of the First Cities.
Most museums, most major museums, have signed on to the UNESCO agreement of 1970, which commits them not to buy unprovenanced antiquities, which may be offered to them. And in fact, they usually don't. But the loophole is that they will show items which are on loan from a private collector. And it's authenticated, it is made real. And in certain ways, because it went on display and nobody came and said, that's ours and it should be returned to us, it also, in a certain way, maybe is washing it. It's a kind of a cleansing of the object, of its dubious past.
For archaeologist Bennett Bronson, every contemporary collection of Iraqi artifacts is suspect.
Anything that has come into any major museum in the last 30 years without a good, tight provenance so that you know exactly where it comes from is almost certainly a looted object.
This piece.
Even for the Marine colonel in Baghdad, a visit to his local museum will never quite be the same.
I'm already ruined. Every museum I will visit for the rest of my life, I will be looking to see if it's a cylinder seal or a cuneiform tablet or a lapis lazuli bead that I recognize having come from Iraq.
Here, too, in the august British Museum, the origins of its fabulous cylinder seals, many from Iraq, are somewhat vague. And who knows where Eli Borowski got his cylinder seals? Probably through Switzerland, home to many collectors who follow events in Iraq closely.
If you want to come down, I'll show you.
George Ortiz has poured much of his inherited Bolivian tin mining fortune into what is described as the greatest private collection of antiquities in the world.
And as you'll see, everything is just stacked up, and all the Sumerian objects in my exhibition are here.
What is the appeal that these have for you?
The appeal is they have a spirit. They're full of, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's art of the finest quality. They move me. It's like when you fall in love.
George Ortiz isn't shy about the provenance of his beloved pieces. There's a twist and turn behind every single one.
That's 5 heads. Now, I bought them from a dealer called Level in the Quai de Seine about 40 years ago, and he found them in a basket at the bottom of L'Hôtel Drouot in Paris on the ground floor. How did they come in that basket? What family had them? Who bought them in Iraq? And when? I don't know. What proof do I have? None.
George Ortiz passionately believes that Iraq's antiquities are better off with private collectors like him than with any third world museum or local warlord.
The local chieftains believe that this is their property. They cannot believe, the local tribes with their chieftains, that we are digging this for knowledge. They can only believe that we're digging this because it's worth a lot of money. worth a lot more. And therefore, if it's worth a lot of money and a lot more, it's theirs. And so they're going to dig it up. That's the reality. How are we going to stop that?
At heart, it's the issue of who owns antiquities and who can be trusted to take care of them. This is Samarra, one of the holiest shrines in Iraq. Unlike the Christian and secular sites down south, it's Islamic. Saddam, in fact, was spending millions to restore it. In a 4-hour gun battle during the war, US forces briefly shelled Ba'athist fighters here, then handed Samarra back to its Iraqi guards. One would assume that here is a site revered and protected under Islam. But depressingly, as the crew takes the last few shots,
Look here. Come on here.
one of the guards offers 2 ordinary-looking but highly valued cuneiform balls from the temple site. Under these circumstances, who can be trusted, and how can it be stopped? War strips a nation of more than its dictators. In this case, Iraq's memory is being stripped by people inside and outside the country. At the end of the day, has anything been done to stop this? One thing the Americans did was reopen the museum for a day. Pictures were beamed around the world of beautiful objects back on display. In fact, it was a staged photo op. None of the items displayed here were among those looted during the US invasion. These had actually been retrieved from vaults where they had been locked for safekeeping since the first Gulf War. But this photo opportunity was used to give the impression the future of Iraq's treasures is safe under US stewardship.
This is one of my favorite pieces that's been recovered. What can you tell us about this?
One of those stewards, Marine Colonel Matthew Bogdanos, fought hard to reverse the impression that American forces had allowed the looting to happen.
Yes.
And some pieces have been returned through his efforts.
Okay. All right.
But his job was ended before he could nail any big foreign smugglers or collectors. And he's now handed that pursuit over to international police.
So perhaps that, where is the other?
Like this man, a single Italian art detective and his helper are loading a list of what they think might have been stolen for transmission to a worldwide customs network of vigilant fax machines and email addresses.
A Lithuanian border official, a Chilean customs official, or a Japanese official at their border will look at this, we'll check, do a random search of a bag, we'll find something and say, wait a second, that's a cylinder seal from Iraq, I'm confiscating this and you're under arrest.
But former New Scotland Yard detective Charlie Hill says police forces just don't care about stolen antiquities.
The police are not doing much, and they're never going to do much. It is all done with sounding good and looking good, and there's no intention, as far as I can tell, of doing anything than passing endless laws, creating bureaucratic procedures and so forth to deal with the problem, but there's no real enforcement involved in it.
The problem is that some of the really big players in the antiquities game don't go through the same customs check as the ordinary traveler.
One great avenue for the export of illicit antiquities has been diplomatic pouches. So you find frequently people like ambassadors have collections. Diplomats of all kinds, and of course rich businessmen, all have these things sitting there in their offices. And they're the ones who can afford it, and they're the ones, of course, who can arrange to get things out. And certainly you would be shocked to have anybody come around and say, well, this is terrible, this is a crime to collect these.
Governments around the world were briefly shaken by the looting of the Iraq Museum. 95 countries dusted off their signatures on the 1970 UNESCO ban on the smuggling of Iraqi antiquities. But two of the most important nations on the smuggling trail, Israel and the United States, haven't effectively implemented that ban. Some believe the antiquities smugglers are just laying low for a while.
The illegal antiquities market will be back in business as usual in 2 or 3 years. But it has definitely slowed things down. It has definitely increased the general public's awareness of this problem.
Gwendolyn Like thinks the media coverage is a double-edged sword.
If people repeatedly tell you that a pretty unattractive looking clay thing with sort of something that looks like bird markings on them is an item of value, they might want to acquire it. So the media coverage has actually helped to push up demand and has helped to push up prices and has also helped to make that an opportunity for realizing an income for people who are prepared to risk that. The real solution is to improve living conditions in Iraq, give people a sense of ownership of the place and their own destiny, and make sure that the oil revenue is directed as promised to the country itself, which would hopefully make lootings no longer a viable option.
Donnie George blames private collectors for the disaster that has befallen Iraq's antiquities.
Of course, these collectors are, I believe they are behind everything.
Really?
Yes. Because if they don't buy stolen material, nothing will come out of the country.
The supply of looted antiquities from Iraq, or anywhere else, will never dry up until the cozy world of museums and their tax-savvy collectors is prized open by the police.
It works sort of like the drug trade. And in many ways, it's very much like the drug trade. There's a real craving for this material, and where if there's a craving, somebody will supply it.
Perhaps it's an opportunity for the big collectors to curb their enthusiasms.
I don't know how, in the long run, it's possible to suppress this desire of individuals, particularly wealthy individuals, who don't know what to do with all this money they've made, to stop collecting things.